At the outset, I would thank Neeraj as well as the Chamber for Hyderabad Chambers for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts on these auditing standards. Um, Before we dwell into that, I thought I'll share with you. You are able to see the screen?
Yes, we are able to see the screen share.
Okay. So generally people ask, even Neeraj asked me, how is it working from home? So there was a bullock cart which was going, and the the farmer was sleeping peacefully there, and there was a person passing by who's supposed to be a software engineer, not to mention bad things about it, but he said, how are you sleeping peacefully? Is what happens if buffalo doesn't move the bullock cart? And then the farmer coolly told that he said the bell will not ring, but what happens if the buffalo is nodding his head? So he said, sir, I don't work from home. So this is the type of stuff happening. And with reference to economy, the complete slowdown, and already with the last few days, 1 week, things are better, but overall it is yet to kickstart operations, and consumer spend is really slow. And I was surprised that a big stock market like India, Monday and Tuesday last week, stock market came down after GDP numbers came down. And I was telling someone that you don't need to be an analyst to find out GDP numbers coming down. When everything is locked down, there is no point in no economic activity. How can market factored it on March 23rd itself? So this is how the economy is there. And the standards per se, I thought I'll take 2 minutes on that. The first one is the quality. When we put our signature, or when we commit ourselves to the opinion on the general purpose financial statement, quality of the financial statement is what is very crucial. So these standards ensure the quality. I remember a long time back, maybe 30, 40 years back, when my mother took me to a doctor nearby village, the doctor will put the same injection on some 20 patients. You will have a hot water, and then the syringe will be taken. Same syringe will be used on 20 patients. Today, you can't do that. So the same way, auditing standards are very important for ensuring the quality of the audits. The next area is the uniformity. If I sign the balance sheet, if Neeraj signed the balance sheet, or you sign the balance sheet, so it's finally, we are the members of the institute. So uniformity is one area where the standards ensure that as a profession, we come out much more better. The third is the protection. If I have followed the standards, it is presumed that that I have done my job. So that gives me protection. See, in the case of doctors, doctor can only do up to some point of time. After that, if the patient dies, that is not his responsibility. Same way, we have to, these standards protect us to some extent, that we have done our role. So protection is the one more area which is very crucial. And the last is regulatory. See, today, whether we like it or not, the regulator is looking at our audit profession very carefully. Now, post NFRA, we have a very serious scrutiny on the auditors, and also accountability of the auditors. And our own CA Institute also has multiple layers of regulatory review, peer review, and quality review board, and things like that. So these are the reasons why we need to look at auditing standards. And more than the standards, many times we talk about auditing standards, we talk about documentation, we talk about auditor's report. But if you see the section 145 of the Companies Act, the auditor is supposed to read out the adverse or any remarks. So basically, it is just not the signature which is important, which is also our auditor's word. So our word, you know, it is if it is audited, the financial statement before the audit, the financial statement after the audit is supposed to be much more valuable than audited statement with unaudited statement. So one has to understand that at the end of the day, we are adding value to the financial statement and not just signing the report. So we have a lot of changes which are happening, and pressure on people to misstate the financial statement is high. Public perception about the auditors, technology changes, as you would have seen in the recent IFRS, the NFRA review. The technology, Neeraj will be better. I request Neeraj to take a separate session on technology aspects of audit, considering the NFRA. The pace of events and regulator action is quite high. And in the recent past 24 months, the UK Financial Reporting Authority has come and said the quality of audits of financial statement is really not only in UK but also in the US, across the globe. People are raising concern on the financial reporting quality. So what is going to be the future? Before we dwell on the detailed standards, I would take a few minutes on that. So, it is more the way we go about audit now is going to be more of investigative audit rather than simple audit. So timely action has been taken by the institute in this coming out with forensic thing. Maybe a day will come when we will make forensic audit also like internal audit, and say forensic review of the financial statements or financial process or controls. So we have investigative model and remunerative. When the risk is becoming high and the documentation standard review, regulatory review is going on, obviously we need to be adequately remunerated. So when you are a tax consultant, you do tax work, you do accounting work. So obviously there is a conflict in preparing the in being the auditor. So we need to take care of this aspect in the case of our own role, with reference to without any conflict. Litigations are going to go up, and we need to have a professional indemnity insurance, and the technology impact of the audit. Only audit firms at the order of the day. We are going to move towards only audit firms, not tax, or if size of the audits are going to be higher, we will have a situation where the audit firms will do only audit work. In India already, 2 large firms have already announced that they will not do any non-audit work for audit clients. So this is, recently I came across a very reputed firm of auditors, a very large firm which has translated. He was talking common denominator is money, but we need to realize that common denominator is the trust. I thought I'll take you through detailed technical standards. So this slide is prepared by ICAI, where I have been a peer reviewer and peer review trainers. So to that extent, it is not my slide, but it is the ICAI slide. I think I have authority to use it. And because I've been a regular faculty for peer review board for the past 20 years now, or more than 17 years. So we have broadly, this is the framework, which I don't need to dwell too much into this, but SQC 1 is one where I think I need to spend some time on that. So I'll take some time on SQC 1. SQC 1, most of you should not take these standards as what is known as a burden. I would say that you need to take it as a framework given to grow your firm and ensure quality work is done. So these are various standards which are there, which is at ICAI. So we have a framework, we have engagement standards and mandatory standards and bold letter standards. So yes, SQC1 apply to the firms, and so assurance and related services, auditing, peer review standards, assurance engagements, and related things. I'll dwell on this assurance standards, quality SQC1, the firm's responsibility of its system of quality. So it is at the firm level, you are supposed to have standards. So when peer review happens, people come and look at the firm. At the firm level, are we having these standards? Audit of historical financial and other assurance standards. All firms must have quality standards, provide firms personnel comply with. So we need to see that all the people in the firm comply to this. So this is where people are keenly looking at that. So if a standard sole proprietor is there, you may have a partner. With the reference of, if you don't have a partner, then how do you go about complying with that when you have a larger client coming to you? So we need to work on those aspects. So these are the areas like leadership responsibilities of quality control, ethical requirements, client acceptance and continuance. One of the big areas is client acceptance. If you take care of client acceptance, you take care of everything. So human resources, then the engagement performance, and the last one is monitoring. So leadership responsibilities, firm to design policies and procedures, promote internal culture. You need to have a managing partner. So the ICAI, the standard setting body, has codified how to run a firm. Those are all given in the SQC1. You don't need to be a very large firm with 100 partners or 25 partners or 300 partners to have your own codification. It's all given in SQC1. So leaders to recognize the quality procedures, business objectives. So if you are a firm with 5 offices, 8 offices, 10 offices, or multiple countries, you need to have these type of processes in place. So assign management responsibilities, HR policies. At location level also you need to take care. At head office level you need to take care. So your delegation down the line. See, you see the person delegated to you, who's your responsibility. One of the concern which I have with reference to CA firms not growing is not delegating. I want to be everything. I will only know the client. I will only do the documentation. I will only sign the auditor's statement. That then you cannot grow. So the SQC1 says that how do you delegate the quality control responsibility? If I am going to sign the balance sheet, somebody else has to do the audit, or I have to review the work. So you have prepared by, reviewed by, and approved by, then reviewed by, then quality control review, then the firm's the audit partner continuously engaged in all these areas. So ethics is the one more area which we need to look at. See, ethics cannot be codified; it has to be practiced. And
KKR, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I am not sure whether there's a disconnect because the screen is still showing the heading slide, that is compliance with technical standards. So is it that you have not moved? It's only showing the first slide.
No, compliance standard. Now you're able to see?
Yeah, it's showing this first slide only, the title slide.
No, not more.
No, it's showing the title slide, not the second. Are you still on the title slide or are you?
No, I moved on to some 10, 15 slides now.
So those slides are not visible here.
1 second, I'm just seeing. There's too many options are given there. Now it's again came.
So yeah, you click on that resume slideshow. I think, see, the slideshow is a separate window, while the PPT must be a separate window. You are sharing the wrong window.
Came?
No, I suggest you stop it once more, and then while selecting, you select you'll be seeing 2 windows.
1 second. Got it?
It's still on the first slide. Otherwise you keep scrolling through this one itself. Go down to 10th page or whatever.
1 second.
Yeah.
You stop sharing now?
Yeah, it stopped sharing.
It came?
It's still on the first slide, Sheikh. That's what I'm saying.
1 second.
Sir, you first click on enable editing and then click
enable?
editing. You just open this thing, sir. Presentation. You share the presentation.
Nice. Are you able to open this? Can you see here?
Yeah. Here
Yeah.
first you do protected views. Then enable editing. You click on that. Enable
Enable.
editing.
One
Yeah. In the middle of the screen.
Click on that. Right hand side. Just protected view. Right hand side it is enable editing. You just click on enable editing. Just tell me what you want to do. Below that it is. No, don't put other. Just protect. Now it has come, sir. Now it has come. Just,
moving.
Yeah. Now it is moving, sir.
So now it's moving.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
moving.
it's moving now.
I'm sorry. See, this is the SQC one which I mentioned, and then we talked about the firm level responsibility. The firm is supposed to have these policies, and then these are the areas which I mentioned: that leadership responsibility, ethical requirements, client acceptance and continuation, human resources, and engagement performance. If you take this seriously, your firm should be growing at 200% year on year. This particular slide. If you really take this as a process at your firm level and keep adding more, keep inviting more people to come into your firm will definitely grow. If you think this is more got to do with the growth of firm rather than compliance. I just talked about delegation. The last point, person delegation of quality responsibility. So one area where I feel most of the firms, all the firms across the marketplace I have seen, having been a peer reviewer trainer, the delegation is one area where we need to work on very carefully, and we can't sign a paper if it is not reviewed by somebody else. So we need to be extremely serious about this. And then ethics is what we are talking about with this, that integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, and professional behavior. And the independence is more of a state of mind rather than on paper independence. So you are able to see my screen now, it's moving. Neeraj? So I presume that you are able to hear me.
No, just you first click on enable editing, sir.
It's not moving.
No, it's not moving. It's system of quality control. On that it is there.
I think there is some issue.
No, that's correct, sir. You just see on the center of the screen top, enable editing is there. You just click on that.
Enable
editing. The one
yellow band is there, na?
One button. Why? What you call as gray color button is there in the center of the screen. Enable editing.
You are screen sharing. It says.
No, Sheikh. You are on the top of the screen. You will have a green button saying you are viewing somebody's screen. Below that, in PowerPoint itself, there is a button called Enable Editing within PowerPoint.
Okay. 1 second. Enable.
In the middle of the top middle. Enable editing.
Insert design. Slideshow is there.
No, below that. There's a yellow bar that we are seeing there.
Yeah. Enable editing. Yeah.
Click on that.
After that, you do the slideshow.
F5.
1 second. Sorry. Is it coming now?
No, you have to share the screen now.
Just move it, sir.
Now it's coming?
Yeah. Yes, perfect.
Yeah, it's moving, sir. Perfect.
In case if it is not moving, please let me know.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
So annual written confirmation regarding independent requirement is a must. So the SQC one says annually your firm should have independent compliance review. So client acceptance and continuance, establish policies relating to client acceptance and also process relating to client acceptance and the documentation relating to this. So withdrawal from an engagement, this is a very big area. Suppose if you have certain issues on certain clients, you need to review every year whether you are going to continue the client or withdraw from that engagement. Recently, SEBI has come out with a guidelines on when the auditors resign from an audit between the quarters, what is the procedure? Human resources, this is the single most important area for the growth of firms, which is codified in SQC1. Sufficient personnel with capabilities, competence, and commitment, ethical principle enable the firm and partners to issue reports appropriate to the circumstances. So you have the broad areas: recruitment, performance evaluation, capabilities, competence, career development. See, if an article clerk is passing from your firm, you should motivate him to stay with your firm. That is the more important aspect. That is one of the reasons why first year, second year, third year, you do a lot of, in fact, ICAI is doing wonderful job on that with reference to those training programs and career development within the firm. How do you promote people? How do you move people across various functions, across geographies and stuff like that. Promotion and compensation is one more concern which we have to retain people. In fact, across the towns and metropolitan cities. For example, currently in Bombay, many people are leaving. Why? Because A, they are sitting at home. Two, they are getting bored, and you find a lot of money has come from other parts of the world. You have interest rate in UK minus, it is in minus. Interest rate in the US is 0. So you find the whole financial market is flooded with money, and you find the corporates hiring. So people from across various industries, including audit firms, have keep moving the jobs. So this is another area: compensation and estimation of personnel needs. Responsibility for each engagement to be assigned to engagement partner. So each engagement is supposed to have a partner assigned, and that partner is supposed to work hands-on on that engagement, not to just come when you are getting appointed or whenever you come for a board meeting or sign the auditor's report. You need to have very serious involvement between the client and I know many audit firms, auditors know only the letterhead of the client, and they are in their office doing tax work, and the audit report comes to them. So this is not acceptable according to the auditing standard. We need to see that we get involved with an engagement, and we need to see that we on a timely basis communicate with the client and so on and so forth. And then you see the fourth point: assignment of appropriate staff. So this is I find most of the firms, partners come for CPE programs, but how many of their staff are being trained on a regular basis? In fact, for more than 25 years, I go to a variety of audit firms. In their training programs, I meet people, and we have training programs for IFRS, IND-AS, auditing standards. But in your firm, every month, in fact, I know firms where every Saturday, the managing partners sit with all the audit partners and their staff. So we need to see that appropriate staff are assigned and they are being trained, and policies and procedures relating to compliance with the standards and laws and regulations. Engagement teams, staffing, coaching, supervision. Supervision is one more area where auditing standards requires you to prove that audit was sufficiently supervised. So important aspects of engagement, supervision, consultation. This is one more area. When in doubt, you need to consult. In fact, when I was in Himayatnagar, I used to regularly interact with Neeraj on at least meeting him once in a while on consultation matters. Now I think he is very busy, and unless I go to him for a specific purpose, he doesn't call me. Maybe Corona period, maybe. So differences of opinion, whenever you are in doubt, whenever two partners are not in agreement, when your partnership firm is not in agreement with that view, you need to consult with another firm and then get it documented. Most of the times, we get calls, we discuss in seminars, but it has to be documented. In that audit, you need to have evidence that you have consulted with an expert. And that's why when I answer calls, I am more careful rather than meeting the person. I would prefer to meet the person, understand the issue, document it. They have to document it. The person who has the issue has to document it, that he consulted. And if required, if it is very sensitive information and you need to get a written opinion, you may have to take the permission from the person who is giving you that opinion. So engagement documentation is a very big area. Assembly is a final audit file, confidentiality, safety custody is another big area. Accessibility of engagement documentation. I remember once when the trust section 12A was introduced, or when they wanted trust deed, I went into the godown. Luckily for me, I got all the trust deeds which are filed a long time ago. The document retention, document ownership. These are all very big areas which we need to address in clients which are growing. In most of the organization, I have found that auditor is the only person who has most of the audit documentation. This is very important for you because as auditor, many of you sign auditor's report with the balance sheet. In some audit firms, I find they don't have even the signed accounts. In fact, in Bombay, in one of the listed companies, they found that somebody else was signing the accounts for the listed company, and they are using auditor's report and the signature, where the auditor is not even aware that he is being shown as the auditor. This is a very serious problems in the marketplace. One has to be extremely careful about this. So networking of the firms. There are some guidelines on networking of some firms, how it has to be done. So this documentation, SQC1 also talks about documentation, size of the firm, number of officers, degree of authority of people, nature and complexity of a firm's practice and organization. If a sole proprietor is having, you can afford to have, not so much detailed work, but basic minimum documentation. Neeraj has ensured that I come and discuss with you. I have a separate PPT to share with you. Then time period. So I will go through some of those key points. Terms of engagement. See, very important, you need to have a written terms of engagement between the auditor and you. See, otherwise you get into problem. So you need to have terms of engagement with your client. And engagement letter, suitable career, sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, written assurance report. So you have overview of engagement standards. We will talk about it, general principles. So these areas, general principles, integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, I think I don't need to get into this. We are going to discuss this in detail. Terms of audit engagement, and then accepted engagement letter has to be with you. See, when for every audit, you need to have an engagement letter. I don't know how many firms practice this. Of course, Companies Act, under Companies Act, you will have engagement letter, you will have filings and stuff like that. Now you have further filings also. So, so varieties of management responsibility and what are the areas which are covered, variety of letters, including that auditor firm. The audit firm is subject to peer review process, and hence some other auditor will come and check. That has to be put in the engagement letter, and you have to confirm. You have to put it in the engagement and get it confirmed by the client. We will talk, I'll spend some time on audit documentation. I think documentation is one area which is very, very concerned. I have significant concern on audit documentation, because many times when I do peer review, people come and say, how do you expect us to do this documentation when the cost of doing the audit and their fees, most of the clients give the fees only for the last year now. So unless you follow up and things like that. So, but the auditing standards require the auditor to have sufficient, appropriate audit evidence on the audit and documentation details. The standard is very detailed. What audit procedures you have followed for every significant items in the financial statements, what audit procedures you have performed, what is the outcome of the audit procedures, what is the evidence nature, timing and extent of audit evidence obtained and the conclusions reached. So you have a very variety of things: planning, supervision, evidence of planning, quality control review, accountability, record of matters of continuous significance, and evidence of the basis of conclusion and achieve, and final external inspection. See, what is not documented is not done. See, this is a very important area. See, I am always having firms where there is a documentation is not at all there, and in certain firms, very large firms, you have audit means documentation. That is not the case. You have to do audit. Documentation is the proof that you did audit. So you need to have an optimum balance of ensuring that when there is an external party coming, that is why if I do the audit, I have to ask another person to come and review my file and see that he is satisfied if I have to sign the balance sheet. So this is, in fact, this is one big area. I don't know why ICAI, I have been proposing to the Auditing Standard Board that before an auditor signs, another person has to review. Single partner firm, I don't know how, we need to have a mechanism by which external, we facilitate the file for external inspection irrespective of a peer review. So this is, I will cover some standards relating to audit. Then I will go into the documentation aspect of a case study. Maybe around 6:30, 6:20, I will cover the case study. Sufficient and appropriate, documentation is maintained. So we need to document whether we have done sufficient evidence, okay, appropriate evidence. Then we have a whole set of standard on fraud, with reference to fraud, whether auditor is responsible, the responsibility of auditor while doing the audit of financial statement in respect of fraud. While the primary audit is not supposed to be going behind the finding whether there is fraud, but if there are incidental or there is, I'm not using the exact wordings of the wordings in the standard, but you are supposed to see that well, there is a chance when it is going through that you find that there is a fraud, you need to allow, otherwise it becomes a scope limitation. That's one of the reasons why audit fees is if audit fees is fixed with some assumption and you find a big fraud sitting there and you need to spend a lot of time, then it becomes a very serious issue for the auditor. That's one more area which one has to consider. So misappropriation of assets, fraudulent financial reporting, and incentive to pressure. So this is very big area on frauds, and I'm not going to dwell on that, but auditor has to be extremely careful on this. See, today in India, we have two big legislative action. One is NPAs, non-performing assets. So you have a situation where public sector banks have merged on this 1st of April. That means what? There are significant portion of advances are not being represented by assets. You have loans, write-offs, you have NPAs. So you have a very serious action which are going to go behind, people are going to go behind the people on whom loans have been given, and there is the financial statements of those auditors. And the second is insolvency code. Luckily, or for those who are practicing insolvency, unfortunately, but this freeze on the insolvency practice, activity action on this insolvency thing during this period. But when an insolvency professional is appointed, they get into the details in the financials reporting whether there has been an issue of misappropriation, things like that. So these areas will definitely put an auditors on a review mode by an independent authorities. So there is a very detailed standards. It talks about auditors' responsibility. This is why when Neeraj Kapat introduced me as a CFO, so my professional skepticism, gets into problem when I'm a CFO. So similarly, most of you, when practicing CA is there, he is nothing but, in my view, who does, if they have, in practice, we look at their accounting in some firms. So we need to see that professional skepticism area where we need to independently see whether something has gone wrong. So this is an area with reference to, sitting with the team, audit team, and going into the details of that. Risk assessment. I've been advised by Neeraj to get into that control thing little more. I will go into that little later. Auditor unable to continue engagement is another area. Responsibilities related to laws and regulations in an audit of financial statements. So laws and regulation is very wide area. You have multiple laws which we need to ensure that if there are some issues, we need to see whether we need to comply with this standard, most of the regulations. Okay, audit assessment for reasonable assurance, financial statement, and laws and regulation. Okay, so material amounts, disclosures, obtain confirmation, and whether we need to take care of those aspects. Okay. But you need to do additional procedures. So if there is money laundering, if there is a non-compliance with the RERA, these are the common areas. So this is another area, that communication with those charged with governance. See, the standard requires the auditor to issue a management letter, something we call it as management letter. So those charged with governance. So if in the company's case, you have to communicate with the audit committee or the board of directors. So on an ongoing basis, this is a very important thing. What are the matters to be communicated? What has to be done? Nature, timing, all of this are given there. So this has been taken carefully with reference to that. After the audit, you need to send out a letter. What are the key observations and things like that. What is your responsibility? What have you done? And promote effective two-way communication and timely observation of matters. So this is a very serious requirement, particularly those who are doing private company audits, those who are doing those husband and wife companies where there is only the managing directors are, the directors are only family members, and there are a single person company, one person will be sitting there, who is the other director, he will be somewhere else or not to be seen. So we need to be extremely careful on this compliance with these standards, and oral communication is not adequate. You can't say I discuss board meeting, you see my name is there. That's not acceptable according to the standards. So it has to be in writing. And Institute also has come out with recently some more points on these matters. Post NFRA reviews. Written communication need not include all the matters that are arising from the audit. Timely basis. So now this is the standard on this. Then we go to the joint audit. So in joint audit, most of you do bank audits, and some of you are the central statutory audit of large banks. So we need to see that the responsibility, the standards requires the joint auditors to communicate with each other, understand the scope, division of work, monitoring of work, sharing of data, and discussing the treatment of various matters, and so on and so forth. So then risk assessment. This is quite a big area. Risk assessment and response to assessed risk. See, finally, audit is all about what could go wrong with reference to when I sign the balance sheet, is the financial statement true and fair? Whether anything is wrong in the financial statement, which could have otherwise altered my opinion on the financial statement. So you are supposed to add value to the financial statement by putting your signature, and that involves your assessment of the risk and also your response to that risk, and which is to be documented. So planning. So the main area, I would say 60% of the audit will be done in planning stage, in my view. And if you do planning, 60% audit is done, and your cost is the effort and the cost. And the efficiency of audit is also substantial if you do the planning and document the planning. So you need to have a planning document, and I will cover it in the case study which I'm giving you, or some areas. So planning of the engagement involve what is the key members, planning activities, establish overall strategy, documentation overall audit strategy, audit plan, changes to overall audit strategy, audit consideration, in internal audit engagement. So risk assessment. So risk assessment involves, entity and its environment and internal controls. You need to, right, in an election year, you will have political contribution. In a bad year, in this 31st March 2020, we have COVID environment, ICI and international agencies have come out with accounting for COVID and auditing under COVID circumstances, and factoring that in auditing papers and as well as in financial statements. So being objective, all the risk assessment procedures, inquiries with the management, observation, inspection, inquiry, and analytical review procedures. So this is a very big area. So inquiry with the management, then observations, inquiry of others, which includes third-party stock statements. It involves collecting the bank confirmation evidence and information from previous engagements, impact opening balances. You have quite a bit of compliance on this. Entity and its environment, you have nature of the entity, operations, government and ownership, structure and financing, investments, objectives, related business risk relating to material misstatement, accounting policies, quite a bit. We need to spend time on accounting policies. Many times we find cut and paste of last year accounting policies here. That is not acceptable. So we need to see that every item, major material item, whether there is an accounting policy already detailed and consistently followed. Internal controls. See, at the end of the day, it is whether the controls are existing, whether the controls are documented, whether the controls are working throughout the period, and how, as an auditor, whether we have decided to rely on those controls. If you have decided not to rely on controls, what is the substantive procedures you have done? If you have relied on the controls, what is the evidence that you have tested and seen that the controls are working? And then conclusion thereof. Many times we say that this is wrong, that is wrong, when that remains there. It has to be addressed. If there, many times I have companies, I used to do audit of companies which are small companies. I used to convince those board of directors that controls are the secrets given to the company to grow that company. If they comply with the controls, the company is going to grow. If they don't comply with the controls, the company is not going to grow. In fact, many companies have died because businesses have collapsed because controls have not been complied with. A single person in Singapore Exchange was allowed to take derivative positions in Japanese markets, and consequently a 90-year-old bank failed. So if you find controls being overridden, controls being in one person's hands without being, so then you have issues on internal controls. So if audit is about evaluating whether the controls are working or not, if controls are working, then you want to place reliance. You need to document that you have placed reliance on controls. That is very important. You see, the standards require you to document what is the extent of control testing, reliance on controls, and then if you have not relied on controls, what are the substantive procedures you have performed and analytical review procedures you have performed, and how you are convinced that the audit as a whole is you are relying on, you are able to express opinion. So consistency, automated controls have benefits. You have variety of enhanced timeliness, additional analysis possible, better monitoring. So today you have companies which are growing, go into ERP mode. You have automated controls, and risk of automated control, you have design problems, And I used to have this way back in 90s. When the controls, the software programs are coming and companies are growing, new ERP systems are coming, SAP is just being implemented, you find that entire program is faulty. In fact, I have seen some banks where that program was not even run. Then what will happen? That means that particular item of income or expenditure is not accounted. That means inaccuracy of design. Unauthorized access is a very big area. Unauthorized changes to master files, unauthorized changes to systems or programs, failure to make necessary changes to programs and systems, inappropriate manual intervention, inability to access data. In fact, if you see the recent report of NFRA, they have come down heavily on the auditor saying that these automated or ERP, the audit was not sufficient. Program was done in reference to that. Understanding of controls relevant to audit, so then we need to see inquiry, observation, inspecting, tracing of transaction through information system relevant to the financial reporting. So I'm not going to get detail into this. I would say that an information system specialist like Neeraj takes half a day session on this. See here, information system relevant to the financial reporting is quite crucial for the auditor. So not only the auditor is supposed to examine the system, he is supposed to understand, he is supposed to decide and document whether how much he has tested that. This is a very big area one has to address. Many of our firms, particularly bank audit, I'm sure that we need to do more work on this. So we have control activities, nature of risk assessment, and then we have information system monitoring and internal controls. So again, I'm not getting into that. Risk assessment is new personnel, new technology, new business model. For example, today, when you go and sign the balance sheet now in the month of August, September, October, you have a primary responsibility with reference to events occurring after the balance sheet date. And you need to take a call on how to adjust. You have guidance on that. You need to take care of that. Corporate restructuring, expansion of foreign operations, decided response, rapid growth, new technology, new accounting, and you have identifying of business risk. So information system, I am not going to dwell too much on this, but we need to see, review that and performance review, physical records, segregation of duties. It's a very big area. Segregation of duties, who is performed the activity, who is reviewed the activity, who is having the custody as well as the ownership, who is having that recording has to be segregated, information processes. So general IT controls and application controls, policies and procedures, apply mainframe, miniframe, and end user. Today, your accounting is becoming online. People are coming out with Zoho and other people have online accounting packages, which you don't need to keep physical books in your office, but it is online. So that in that situation, how are you going to audit it? How are you going to ensure that there is a backup? How are you going to see that there is enough retrieval of information whenever you want it? Master data, how integrity of the data. So we have so many aspects, application controls, and I'm not getting into the details here because we have too many standards to be given, to be discussed today. And we will have a question answer also on this, on different aspects. Judgmental matters, non-routine transactions. So general entry testing, accounting estimate, we need to see what are the specific types of risks which are there in these areas. For example, provision for doubtful debts, provision for obsolete inventory. So when you have weakness in internal control, what have you done on that? See, sometimes people say, see, there is a control weakness. Then what is the impact? You need to document it. Then how have you tested it? How have you taken care of that in your decision to rely or not to rely? How have you done? This is again a very important area. So then I'll go to audit. There is a standard on audit materiality. So nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures is based on the materiality you decide. So one has to look at the materiality for not only the financial statement as a whole, but are also the significant part of those financial statements which are important for you to take an opinion, so that otherwise the opinion itself will get affected. So we need to see that materiality standard is followed, and you need to have audit materiality, and you need to see the significant items, how you have tested those items and things like that. Evaluation of misstatement is directly dependent on the materiality which you are going to decide. In one many years back, I did audit of an account, and I found I made an adjustment of 8 crore to 8 crores is the adjustment which I made, or 25 crores, so I don't remember, for an item of 5,000 crore. For 5,000 crore, I made an adjustment of 8 crores or 25 crores. So it was not material. But when the auditor's result came, I found the total profit after tax is only 10 crores. So that is material. See, it depends on the item, managing director's remuneration, provision for tax, depends on the item also, not only item, but whole financial statement also, we need to see the materiality. What is auditor's response to assess risk? This is again a big standard which explains you identified risk. So for each identified risk, you are not supposed to have nature, timing, and audit procedures. And nature means purpose and type. Timing, I'm not going to get into the details because you're all experienced auditors. Test of controls, again, I'm not getting too much into that. Audit evidence during interim audit. See, one has to look at, I know many auditors don't go to client place. They want our client to come to you and sign the audit when it is required to be signed. No, you are supposed to visit every client where the audit fees is more than 5, or I would say, if you think a client is contributing to at least 3 to 5% of your fees, total fees, you need to visit the client once in 3 months. Get involved, understand. See, you grow with the client. Your firm will not grow unless the client also grows. See, this is a very big area. You need to do interim audit. You need to necessarily do interim audit. It has to be in the planning documentation. Previous audit. What are the audit evidence gathered during the previous audit? What do you have to do? Factor that, and then you have to go through those files, old files. Normally, when article assistant as well as audit teams goes for the audit, the previous audit papers have to be, you need to ensure that they go through the previous audit papers before they go for, say, start the work. Nowadays with information technology, audit files are there on the system. So then we go to substantive procedure. See, substantive procedures are detailed audit programs where after control testing is over, after control testing is documented that which controls you want to rely, then you will not do detailed substantive procedures in respect of those. Wherever you feel that you need detailed substantial procedures, that has to be documented, and those audit programs and audit procedures have to be put in the program. And once you have substantive audit procedures, you need to document the audit findings and then conclusions. Nature, timing, and extent of substantive procedures has to be documented. That is detailed audit programs. And then conclusions reached. This is the sufficiency and appropriation audit evidence. Okay. Then there is a standard on service organization. Today, you have many organizations where payroll is outsourced. Many organizations, even accounting is outsourced. Today, in India, in Chennai alone, you have about at least 25 large listed companies in the US have their accounting outsourced either between Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, and Bombay, and Pune. You have 2 lakh, 3 lakh people working only on their accounting of the US listed companies and their global subsidiaries. So use of service organizations when something is outsourced, payroll is outsourced, or accounting is outsourced. So you need to take care. Even tax is outsourced. Suppose you may be doing audit, but tax is not done by this company, but it is done by somebody else. Then you need to call that auditor who is doing tax work and get the status of the income tax assessment, get the provision for taxation complied by him. Audit evidence, there is a separate thing. See, finally, audit is examination of evidence, and then sufficient and appropriate evidence, and then concluding that these financial statements are reliable. So the standard says that whether you have complied with this standard, whether nature and timing of audit procedures, so you have a detailed standard, sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, relevance and reliability. These are the 4 areas: sufficient, appropriate, relevance, reliability of the evidence. These are the four important areas one has to look at. I'm not getting into that. Obtaining evidence, this is again a very big area. See, this is why you need to go to client place. You need to even observe smallest of the smallest matters. I remember in one client, that audit client is not able to pay the salary for 3 months, but my staff are going to 5-star hotel every day for the past 15 days. I said something is wrong. And I found something very big. The financial statement has a big hole. So whereas it is not reflected in the audit. So you need to see inspection, observation. Observation involves physical presence. Observation involves stock observation and so on, so forth, stock audit, stock physical verification of stock and things like that. Confirmation, again, very big area. Recalculation, reperformance, analytical review procedures, and inquiry. Inquiry is again a very big area, not only within the entity, but also if required outside the entity. So these are the areas which you need to take care of. These are the big areas. So this is about test of control, substantive procedures, and analytical review procedures. So there are situations where you have expert giving the opinion prepared by, for example, provision for gratuity. You have an actuarial certificate on the amount of gratuity provision and the liability as in the date during the year amount paid. What is the cumulative liability as in 31st March? So the standard requires you to do this following, Sorry. Competency, capabilities, and objectivity of the expert. For example, in oil and gas industry, we cannot verify it. Somebody has to go along with somebody. You need a surveyor to confirm. So you need to see that understanding of his work and whether input has been given, whether all the data of the employees have been given, whether the data is correct. So you need to do assumptions are correct or not. So physical inventory, these are the broad areas. You can't just take the management confirmation and say, I relied on management confirmation. We have auditors responsibility with reference to physical inventory. In fact, I'm not sure why in COVID situation, the listed company relaxation came very late. See, almost when the auditors are about to conclude, then they extend the time frame. I am completely at loss on that because you see, auditors are not, doctors are dying. I don't know how auditors can be so, so foolproof on this. And this matter should have been taken at the highest level with the Security Exchange Board of India and then taken even at the Ministry of Finance level. Then 2 years later, if they find fault with our audits, then who is being held responsible? Whenever something goes wrong in the financial statement, the first thing which they say, what is auditor doing? This is not acceptable. We need to get into the situation where we need to go ahead. I find so many Zoom calls where council members are coming and speaking. At the end of the day, how is it being represented with the regulator with reference? In fact, I took it with SEBI, and they coolly came and it will be in the website of the SEBI's website if there is. So they see it's not. But of course, what I know from my verbal communication with SEBI is that they have orally informed the listed companies that there is going to be a relaxation. But unless it comes in the website of the SEBI, it is not. It's not going to be of usefulness for the auditor. Opening balance. See, many times you become the auditor of a company which is audited by another professional. This is a huge area. The auditing standards ask you to check the opening balances. In fact, I remember way back in 97 or 98, I did one audit for about 2 years. Because I could not do any opening balance confirmation on inventory, receivable, debtors, and reserves and surplus. Complete issue. So we need to see that we take care of our interests in these areas. How it is done. This is another big area, analytical procedures. And many of you are tax. I am happy to come to Hyderabad study group of Chamber of Consultants. And I have been a tax practitioner myself for about 10 years. And then, see, we all do GP ratio, NP ratio. But only when we do final 143.3 assessment, not when we do audits. See, we need to take care of this. Without analytical review procedures, no financial statement can be signed by the audit firm and audit partner. This is a very big area, analytical review procedures. You need to take care of this. And I'm not spending time on this sampling. There is a detailed sampling standard which talks about multiple methods, multiple results and things like that. It's a very detailed statistic area. I will get into this fair value and also auditing of estimate. See, according to me, fair value itself is a mirage. It's a mirage. It is there, but it is not there. So when you audit and estimate, when you are auditing an estimate, a lot of judgments comes. Hence, you need to be more careful. You need to document, you need to validate, you need to get confirmation, you need to re-examine, get another person. The auditing of estimate like provision for gratuity, provision for doubtful debts, depreciation, useful life are all estimates. Fair value accounting is again a very new area. Fair value is a very huge thing, with reference to impairment, with reference to multiple areas relating to fair value. So while you're doing audit, whether the assessment, whether the judgment, whether the assumptions are, you are agreeable with those assumptions, assessments have been documented or not. I'm not getting into risk assessment as much. Further substantive procedures, you need to, if there are some more uncertainties there, you need to do more testing. This is again a very big area. Substantive procedures. I'm not getting into the disclosure relating to accounting estimates. You need to disclose accounting estimates, need more disclosures, basis of selection of method and things like that. Possible bias by the management. Now return representation, very big area. You touch your heart and say, how many of the firms have a letter of representation from the client saying that I have told all the truth, I have told nothing but truth. I have to see the client. See, that's why I call it as like Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. See, the creator is the client, Brahma. Vishnu is the auditor or the accountant or whoever it is. And the income tax office is the destroyer. See, he will come and say that this, we need to make clients give us this representation letter, preferably while you sign the balance sheet. When you sign the balance sheet, you can't sign the balance sheet without a letter of representation, both for tax audit as well as audits. And all areas, finally he'll say, you only did it. See the particular, if you deal with the company will say, you have only done it. So, but the question is, at the end of the day, we are professionals, we are governed by the standards. There is an accounting standard on related party. When there is transaction between two related party, it is not supposed to be at, we cannot assume arm's length. There is a arm's length transaction, arm's length price comes into questioning. Arm's length value comes into questioning. Okay, so there is a standard on accounting that is applicable to the client, but there is a standard on auditing, which is SA 550 related parties. You are supposed to check whether there is related party transaction, review the procedure, affiliation with key management, review of the shareholder record, memorandum. So this is on the binding on the auditor. See, this is not at all complied by many companies, many auditors. See, this is a very important standard. I have found in peer reviews, a lot of peer reviewers have reported to me that this area is very weak in many big firms. That related party transaction review is one area where there is need to be more documentation compliance. This is almost like a serious violation in many tax audits. When I do the tax audit, even audit, private limited companies or companies, partnership firms, this is a standard, doesn't distinguish between company and non-company. It's applicable for all general purpose financial statements. Subsequent events have to be reviewed and there has to be evidence that subsequent events have been looked at by the auditor and adjusted or not adjusted depending on the nature of the item. It provide evidence for condition that existed on the balance sheet date, provide evidence of condition that arose after the balance sheet date. For example, if you see the recently concluded deal between the Kishore Gibbiani Group and the Reliance Group, the Reliance Group has not taken anything, any liability, anything beyond 31st March, while the assets have been sold as and when on a slump sale basis. So you need to decide on what to do with the subsequent events. Okay, so you are supposed to go through the events, the period between financial statement and date of the auditor's report. Management, no need to perform additional procedures on matters which are earlier already taken care. So we need to see what is to be adjusting and non-adjusting event. The details are there in the standard. A very, very interesting area. I entered the profession, according to me, many years back when in globally we had a big 12 accounting firms. So if you see now, we are almost like 4, we call it, 4 accounting firms. If the auditor does not find the going concern problem of the client, audit firm will have a going concern problem. This is a very big area. Now insolvency code came, and insolvency code says that if there is a default of a loan, and then the person who lent money to the company or the creditor files with the insolvency, then the board can be dissolved by the NCLT, and once the board is dissolved and the company management has been given to the insolvency professional, the carrying value of the assets and liabilities have a different value. You might have signed the balance sheet on 31st March, but in July, in the month of April. But if there is a default in the month of July, and in the month of October, if there is a going concern problem, the 31st March balance sheet also gets into problem. Going concern is a very big area, and one has to do enough documentation on, particularly when you have, for example, if the financial risk is very high and operating risk is very high, the combined risk of the entity is so high, which you have to really worry about in the risk assessment. So you need to do risk assessment so that has an impact on the going concern. Because if the going concern is not there, the carrying value of the assets and liabilities comes down. See, period of 12 months from the date of balance sheet. This is what is generally, it is there in the standard. Information available at the point of time, and size and complexity and nature and condition of business. So the auditor is supposed to have evaluation of the going concern. See, many times, it is, I have done many times going concern note. See, it is a very dicey thing between the auditor and the client. See, if I assess the going concern client assumption is not there, then the client is not at all interested in putting any note. So what we do is we try to tell the client, you give me the notes to accounts, let us have it. Then we write one paragraph and give it back to him. Then he goes through that, and then he gets a heart attack, saying that who is put the note, why it is there. Saying that, you write, justify why that note should not be put. If the note is there, you are also protected, and I am also protected. If the note is not there, both of us are in trouble. It's better he is in trouble by putting the note rather than we not being in trouble by not putting the note. See, please understand, it is very important as auditor that the only asset which you have is your signature. No, and particularly when the promoters fight, when two promoters fight after you sign the balance sheet and filed an income tax rate, and then they come after 2 years and say those accounts are wrong, this was not understood, this was not contemplated, this is not planned, then it is completely not going to be of any use to anybody. Only everybody will look at auditor and say what happened, why this was not written in the auditor's report. This is very crucial, and one has to look at a complete risk assessment for going concern as well as on ongoing things. So I'm not getting into details, but you have multiple details on this. If going concern assumption is inappropriate, you have to express an adverse opinion. It affects, if the going concern is not there, it has very serious consequence, and consequently, you need to have an adverse opinion here. So you see, the moment you say going concern problem, the client is going to retaliate and say that no, we have all the plans. See, please understand, we had an environment where in those days, prior to 31st December 2016, we used to have Sikh Industrial Companies Act regime, and where the Sikh Industrial regime used to be, company has to file for insolvency or Sikh. But now, post 1st January 2017, it is the creditor-driven insolvency process. Creditor is more powerful. So anything can happen with your signature if there is a loan default. A large company, large industrial groups today are debt-free. 1 lakh crore has come by way of funds infusion into India, and one particular large company is completely announced that it is debt-free. Why? Because of this. See, if there is a default, and they are taken into task, and the management is removed, and then obviously carrying values will come down. See, I do work with banks for NPA identification and also consulting on NPA management, and I find large NPAs, thousands of crores, tens of thousands of crores. Significant delay in approval of financial statement. Indicators of NPA. If the financial statement is not coming to you on a timely basis, that means there is something wrong. I always insist on clients, 31st March accounts over, 30th April, you sign the balance sheet and go. Why you are wasting time? You focus on May, June, July business. If any company is looking at, you are able to see my presentation? Hello? So
yeah, Sheikh. Yeah, Sheikh.
Yeah?
Sheikh, we are able to see. Go ahead.
Okay. Don't delay. Don't encourage clients to come to you in August. Don't allow clients to come to you late. Not in Corona period, of course. But generally, because you see, you need to focus. Any client who is very serious about running a business will complete the accounts and move on. See, I typically May and June, I don't spend any time in any audit. I spend time with the CFOs who are already free. Those CFOs don't, financial statement audit is one compliance matter for them. Because for them, financial statement, there is a separate team which works with the auditors and the CFO is busy with M&A, the CFO is busy with future expansion, future market share, competition, new joint venture and things like that. So we need to encourage clients to ensure that there's no delay in written representation. We have covered this, we need written representation, and written representation cannot, in my view, is not, standard says is not evidence. Written representation is not evidence, not sufficient. We are supposed to, is only, written representation is only one more area, See, I request you to go through this written representation matter very seriously, because most of the audit files do not have this. Using the work of others, you have other experts and other people working on. So relying on internal auditor, using of work of an expert, other auditor, so joint audit, other auditors. I'm sure that most of you have clients where internal audit is done by somebody else or internal auditor is there. So how much, one area where I find even today that we have to spend time with the internal auditor. We need to call him. While doing audit planning, call for the internal auditor's scope for the year. How much he is going to do and when he is going to issue the report. then you go through that and factor that in your report, whether to rely, how much you to rely, and things like that. This has a very big area. Again, you using a work of an expert. So you have experts. This we covered it, I think. Audit conclusion. See, while after doing all the audits, after some issues with some audit reports, I was speaking to a very senior auditor and said, look, our audit profession has become very seriously risky. I asked him that only God has to save us. And now before signing a report, we need to place before God, and then next day we'll sign. No, he told me that, I've been doing this for all the years. Because when you sign the balance sheet, we don't know when the problem will come and hit us, which year, what problem. See, we need to have sufficient evidence that all audit conclusions have been documented before report is drawn. Comparatives, you have you have detailed standard on these aspects. So the modified audit report. So qualified opinion and disclaimer of opinion and adverse opinion. I'm not getting into the details, too much into details, because I need to cover the case study also. Comparatives, we need to take care. Then we have, there's a separate statement on review engagements. We have a statement on assurance engagement when we have statement on related party, related service, like agreed upon procedures and compliance to financial statements. See, please understand, a lot of disciplinary cases are there on SRS 4410, engagement to compile financial statements. Auditors have put the stamp and said audited, whereas it is only a projection. It is not a financial statement at all. It is just a project report where projections have been given, and in fact one column relates to the earlier year, which is not audited by that particular year. No audit report has been prepared yet, but our client has put an auditor has, and the bank has filed complaint against the chartered accountant concerned. After that, loan has become NPA. So then this auditor, poor auditor, has to say that it is only an estimate, but it's not written anywhere that it is an estimate.
Shikhar, did you stop the presentation?
Yes. One minute.
Okay.
I want to show you the case study.
Okay.
Is it coming?
Yes.
Case study?
Yes, it is coming.
See, while the case study is only a slide, which talks about, I picked it up from some document, but I could not give the document per se, but I want to share with you what are the contents which are there, The content is planning document. In a planning document, typically it consists of, though I would love to share the document, but I have some considerations on that, but I will blank out those names and things like that. I'll send it across. Period of background and scope of the audit, current business position, financial indicators, significant audit matters for the year. See, when you sit, suppose in the month of April, May, and June, once you finish the audit, sometime in the month, once you are reappointed in the AGM, you need to plan for the audit. So you need to have a document giving a detailed planning of the audit, which you are planning to do, when you are going to do interim audit, what is the time frame. And this document is you have to keep ongoing updates. What is the approach? When are you going to do stock counts? Say, for example, physical verification of fixed assets can be done, property, plant and equipment can be done in the month of December or February. And client will have some materiality. What is the materiality? Audit timetable. Meetings. When are you going to, you should have evidence of meetings of planning with the audit file. Staffing and time budgets. See, many times I find, I'm not sure. I think audit firms have grown to that level of timesheet. Timesheet, finally, as a professional, what we do is time. We spend time morning 8 o'clock to evening 6 o'clock. we spend time on client matters. So each file should have time spent, and each staff should have time spent and what he is spending on. So time and budget at the time of planning, because when I give a quote for an audit fees, I need to estimate how many number of hours I will spend, my team members, some 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, in fact, multiple clients, in fact, multiple countries. In 150 countries, I have a client where I need to send out memorandum and things like that. And I keep getting communication. Even today, though I have left one particular engagement 15 years back, I still get from California that I'm part of that audit. I keep denying that I'm not part of that audit, but still their records are not updated, possibly, or mail ID is wrong. So prepared and reviewed, and we need to have this document. Planning is a must, and every audit file should have a planning document. And in fact, I remember way back, some 20 plus years back, one audit file where I had done an audit where the file went to some very senior person in some other office, in head office. One particular matter which I had put in a planning document, I had not addressed it in the conclusion or anywhere. So the senior person who has gone through reviewed file and signing partner has asked me, this matter is referred in the planning memorandum as a potential issue. I don't find anywhere in the file or in the concluding remark that how it is addressed. That means planning has been done. But the question is, what have you done with that item? So not only we need to plan, but we need to also follow up and regularly update that item. So this is, different organizations call different names for this. Apart from audit programs, apart from suppose property, plant and equipment, revenue, depreciation, wages, you have different schedules and work done in each of the schedules. There has to be one consolidated summary of audit points. Summary of audit, different firms call it as differently. For your, for all you practitioners, when I used to do tax practice, one senior chartered accountant used to say they want to wash their dirty linen with us. So that when I wrote this word soap, so basically after doing everything, client will come to us. And then summary of audit points, the company and year, the background, which year you did audit, summary financials. Significant matters, resolved, unresolved. Unresolved, whatever the discussion points and items which you said, fine, it is not material, we'll leave it like that. Other matters, analytical review procedures and conclusions. See, this has to be there in the summary memorandum. If you don't put it here, it will get lost in somewhere in the file. Summary of unadjusted errors and also judgment that you have to conclude that this may not be material, this is not relevant and things like that. I would have these documents in the summary only as an annexure. I would advise, because you don't have this, your people will miss it. Communication with those charged with governance, significant subsequent events summary, letter of representation, audit report, draft or final, board resolution approving the accounts. And mind you, in many companies, there has to be two files, permanent file and current file. Permanent file will have memorandum, articles, and last year audit report, last year accounts, board minutes of earlier years, things like that. Current file has to be updated every year. And board minutes copies you need to have, or extract of board minutes you need to write down. So this is a very big area, because tomorrow clients may come and say, no, it was there in the board minutes. In fact, I find in many smaller companies, board resolution they keep on issuing board resolution for loan purposes, but it is not at all documented in the final board meetings. It is filed with the banker. So you need to be careful with this. Board minutes completion and completeness and availability, and also you have to write down. You have to write down minutes of board meeting which evidences. In fact, accounts comes mean that means most of the matters. In fact, I found one disciplinary case where two directors are fighting, two shareholders are fighting with each other on matters relating to accounts, and the auditor is sandwiched between those two promoters, and he doesn't have any proof that one matter claimed by another party that this person only dominated the accounts. He never showed me the accounts. He only signed the accounts and got it audited, something like that. So board resolution, signed financials. I mean that this has to be on an ongoing activity. Signed financials have to be with in the audit file. So with this, I think fairly I covered. I covered almost all the points. If you have any points. So I thought I'll finish my presentation. Last few days, I find a couple of participants are indicating that they are going to office, and finally, a lot of our better halves are all relieved that we are going to office. I am sure that some of you are. Any question? I'm opening the session for any question answers. I think I request the organizers to open the discussion.
Neeraj?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Yes. The participants, if you have any questions, kindly put it in the chat box or question and answers.
So, while we get the questions and we discuss that, I just want to share one second. I just want to share a couple of thoughts. Many people think that a software is required for audit documentation. I have seen quite a few software, and software can help in documentation, but you will need to create your work programs first, and your work programs will have to be created for each client differently based on the risk assessment and based on other factors. The other way to go about it is, and which also requires a lot of work, like BCS has come out with a very good publication on checklist for audit under Companies Act. Okay, but if I look at that checklist, that's a bloody 200-page booklet. Okay, and if I were to do that for each of my clients, a private limited company, it's not going to work. So again, there also we need to customize it. So when I started my practice, I'm just sharing some thoughts with all of you and building up on what Sheikh has said. Sheikh has given a very good overview into what is the requirement of standard. The confusion that we as chartered accountants have is how do we implement that? Okay, I know that for data, I need to get external confirmation, I need to maintain documentation, I need to do stock take, etc. But how do I bring it all together as the term that I use? So when I started my practice sometime in 93, 94, okay, my checklist used to be a one-page checklist. Okay, check opening balances, vouch for sales, do vouching of purchases, check against VAT returns at that time, check against excise returns. That used to be my checklist, one-page checklist at that time. But that was not capturing what is required from a legal perspective, from a financial statements perspective, from a accounting standards perspective, and an auditing standards perspective. So I just want to share with you people something that we have recently done, so that, because the whole idea of this session is, one, you should get an overview of the auditing standards like Sheikh has done. And secondly, you should be able to then practically implement it. So I'm just sharing my screen and I'll show you a bit of what we have done. It's not very complex, and this we have customized for our clients' requirements. So what we did was, say for example, for each section, we created these different sections. I hope you are able to see my screen. Samamurthy, is it visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
Yeah, it is clearly visible. But
So
you have to increase the font size.
Yeah, okay.
Just below.
So for each section, for example, in audit planning, I said, okay, does this apply to which industry? Does it apply to a specific industry or all? And which types of legal entities? Does it apply to a company, partnership firm, proprietary concern? So we say this for all, for example. Then we identify what are the legal requirements. Okay, so general legal, regulatory or standards requirements. So we identified this as our requirements, and then we made our guidance. Okay, and then we gave a checklist. Okay, if it's a new client, then this is what you need to do. So what we have done is we have captured all the requirements at one place and then followed it up with what is it that the team is required to do. So similarly, for example, in sales, what is it that we are concerned with? We are looking at financial statement assertions. So what is our financial statement assertions applicable for sales? Occurrence, cutoff, completeness, measurement, presentation, and disclosure. These are the financial statement assertions. Now, for achieving this is my legal and standard requirements. For achieving this, how do I go about it? So I looked at the guidance note on revenue and highlighted the key portions here for my team. And then based on that, we created a document or a step-by-step process as to what they should be doing. And we have a done by date and a done by person and then a date. And what is the remark if there are working papers? Then we created supporting documents for this. So, okay, if they are doing this process, is there a supporting document? There could be a link to this. So we have the file names here. Okay, analytical procedures. This is my template for doing it. So what we need to do, what I'm trying to demonstrate from this is not that we are doing something great. What I'm trying to demonstrate is, on the one hand, you have auditing standards. On the other hand, you have accounting standards. On the third, you have legal requirements, you have company law requirements, you have CARO requirement. You need to bring it all together for a line by line item. So we have for sales, for purchases, for inventory, and so on and so forth. You need to bring it all together, customize it for your requirements or for the requirement of that particular client, and then do it. That is how you will achieve audit documentation. It's not very difficult. It's quite easy to do, and you should be able to do it. So that's what I wanted to just share with you in a few minutes.